Okay, hello, welcome to Mother Cameron and Father Stephen doing the adult form. We've been doing things that are in the news lately, and what's been in the news, you all know we've been overwhelmed with what's been in the news. And so we don't need, in some ways, to tell you about it, but we will tell you a little bit about our faith and relationship to it, but in a strange and different way. We're going to talk about Ravi Zacharias, who is probably known as the foremost apologetic for Christianity in the 21st century. By apologetics, we mean those who defend the faith and its meaning in the day and age in which they live.
Yeah.
Ravi Zacharias died this week, but we will remember him and his apologetic of love, and it may be able to shed some light on the events of the last week. Mother Cameron, you want to say about that?
I said, that's the hope anyway.
That's the hope, yes.
Yeah. So, I know we'll get into it later, but, some of the other apologetics that we're really familiar with is like C.S. Lewis and
Mere Christianity.
Who?
Mere Christianity, C.S. Lewis.
Yes. And if I may be mistaken, but I think Mark Twain was an apologist as well.
At some level, yes. He was also quite a critic of the church, but he also he defended it when he could.
Yeah. So.
Yeah.
All right. That's all.
Okay. Well, let's hear about Ravi Zacharias, which to tell you the truth, I'd never heard of the man until this week, and I was thrilled to learn about him. Christian apologist Ravi Zacharias died at his home in Atlanta, Georgia on May 19th, 2 months after announcing that he had been diagnosed with cancer. Christian apologetics is the branch of theology which refers to the verbal defense, explanation, or reasoned argument for the Christian faith. Ravi was raised nominally in an Anglican family in Delhi, India. Zacharias was surrounded by multiple religious traditions in which he failed to find any meaning, so he became an atheist and finally, in despair, attempted suicide at the age of 17. After he woke up in the hospital, he was given a Bible, and he converted to Christianity upon reading John 14:19, "Because I live, you shall live," Jesus said. Almost immediately, Zacharias began to preach about the hope and coherence he found in Christ. Zacharias immigrated to Canada at age 20. Over nearly 5 decades, he traveled about 200 days every year to more than 70 countries. A sticker on his luggage read, "No one ever built a legacy by standing still." Zacharias authored more than 30 books, including Can Man Live Without God? Why Jesus? The Logic of God? 52 Christian Essentials for the Heart and Mind. He hosted the radio program Let My People Think, and he used podcasts and media to communicate with people. His ministry was guided by twin goals: help the thinker believe, help the believer think. In 1984, Zacharias founded Rabbi Zacharias International Ministries, RZIM, which now has about 200 employees and 16 offices around the world, supporting more than 100 itinerant apologists who preach the existence of God and the reasonableness of Christianity. He also nurtured the Oxford Center for Christian Apologetics, OCCA, in England, and the Zacharias Institute in Atlanta. At a 3-hour memorial service for Zacharias held at Passion City Church in Atlanta, Georgia, via remote video and in tributes from across the globe, family members, co-workers, and friends spoke about how the man had impacted their lives. Vice President Mike Pence called Zacharias the C.S. Lewis of our day, a gentle giant of the faith. Anglican priest Michael Corin said, while he differed with Zacharias on certain issues, I regard him as one of the finest minds I've ever encountered, religious or secular. His grasp of philosophical argument and his ability to counter opposition with clarity and charity, wit and depth was truly impressive. Max Jananathan, Asia Pacific Regional Director for RZIM, said Zacharias and his wife Margie had engulfed me with the love of Jesus and had been God's kiss of grace on him and his wife Fiona. Some noted that Zacharias called everyone by name, treating the marginalized of the world with the same care as he did the rich and the powerful. He was always so focused on honoring others, observed Vince Vitale, director of Zacharias Institute. Sanj Carla, Zacharias' friend and aide, said Zacharias told him, remember to do things for people that can't do things for you. RZIM staff member Lou Phillips and the apologist said the apologist never wanted the ministry to be about himself. He was impressed at how Zacharias would lift out other people. Every time I was around Ravi, I just wanted to know Christ more, Phillips said. Ravi became a father, a friend, a mentor to so many, but he always pointed us to Christ. Zacharias' sister-in-law, Barbara Reynolds, remarked, the way Ravi lived out his faith is the closest reflection of Jesus I have ever known, and reflection has pointed me to deeper faith and trust in the Lord. Others mentioned how Zacharias championed women and children and generously invested in young ministers before they had a proven track record. Tanya Walker, director and dean of OCCA, first heard Zacharias preach when she was 8 years old. She said she felt as if her heart was on fire. So captivated was she by the beauty of God she heard in his message. That was when she first sensed God's call on her life. Many were impressed by how Zacharias engaged skeptics and questioners with respect, humor, kindness, and poise, addressing their intellectual objections to Christianity, demonstrating that there is a logical base for theism, and explaining how the Christian worldview provides robust answers to humanity's existential questions. Tim Tebow, former NFL quarterback, who viewed Zacharias as one of his heroes, said his friend was soft-spoken with a rhetorical style based on the Socratic method. Apologist Lisa Fields credits Zacharias with helping her to think critically about her faith and to listen well to people. I would say we're giving answers to questions people aren't asking, Fields said. From Zacharias' teaching and examples, she learned that Jesus asked questions as a way of really getting to the heart of the matter. The questions people initially bring have deeper roots. The greatest evangelism and discipleship need, then, is to listen to the questions people are really asking. Never forget that behind every question is a questioner, and behind the questioner is a network of assumptions, hurts, struggles, and often prejudices. When someone asks a question, answer the questioner, not the question, Zacharias used to say. For Zacharias, theological discourse was not about winning a point, but about engaging a human being. Jesus never came to win a debate or argument, he pointed out. He came to win people who matter to God. We're not going to win people by mocking them. We're not going to win people by deriding them. You've got to present the winsomeness and beauty of the message that God would have us share, he said in seminars. Louie Giglio, pastor of Passion City Church, said Ravi used his superior intellect not to put people down, but to build a bridge so people could walk across it to find their life in their Maker through the righteous one, Jesus the Christ. In the end, Zacharias said, love is the greatest apologetic.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think there were several thoughts that came to mind, but one thing is, Louie Giglio, the pastor of Passion City, where the funeral was held, is the same guy that some of you will remember several years ago, I preached a sermon about the gospel according to Krispy Kreme. That's all Louie.
I remembered that name. Yeah, he did a whole sermon on the gospel according to Krispy Kreme.
Yes, he did. Yeah.
And he had Krispy Kreme donuts up there for his sermon.
Yes, he did. It was awesome. So so exactly as I was reading that, I was like, oh, I've been there. I know Louie, and his gospel according to Krispy Kreme. And then when I was thinking about kind of what they were saying, Ravi talked about, right, is getting to know what the real question is, right, and hearing through the words of the question to what is really being asked. And I think there's been often times where you have said, and maybe I have, and other pastors have, in their sermon of, okay, they were testing Jesus by asking him this question because, and we have to give the backstory of, here's what else is going on. And so what they're really trying to do is to pit him against the authorities, or
or to catch him up in his talk.
Yeah. So what is it that, we're trying to get at? What is the real question? I think of the guy who came to Jesus and say, what must I do? And you've got to leave. You've done everything, right? You follow the law, you care for others. You just have to give up everything you have.
No, I don't want to.
Yeah, right?
Yeah, but it's described in the Gospels. Jesus says it looked at the rich man and loved him.
Yeah.
He knew what was really going on.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So, one of the things that they reference down here is that the Christian public speaker John Norwich wrote in an article, Apologetics, Why Your Church Needs It, that apologetics is a branch of Christian theology that seeks to address the intellectual obstacles that keep people from taking the gospel of Jesus Christ seriously. And so, I think one of the words that they said was that, getting people to embrace the winsome spirit of Christianity, and then at the same time coming back to say, we got to deal with the obstacles that keep us from taking what Christ is saying seriously. So I'm curious what you think of, do you think our church needs apologetics?
Yes, but his apologetics was also part of the way he lived in relationship with people. And I remember years ago that one of my evangelical friends said that your behavior is the only Bible most people will ever read. In other words, how you live your life as a Christian will be the indication of what you believe and will be the defense of Christianity. And I just thought that was beautiful. And I think that's exactly the way Robbie was trying to live things out. But one of the things Robbie points to is the whole point of morality. He says, you can be a good person, but why are you being good? That's where the apologist comes in. Mm-hmm. What makes you be good? Do you have certain things that you value? Well, why do you value them? Why are they more important than other values? Why are they more important than your everyday life, that you're willing to submit your life to those values? Can you call that God? It's exactly what Tillich used to say, that your ultimate concern is really your God. And in Mere Christianity, C.S. Lewis doesn't use the same theological language, but he does say the same kind of thing. Well, where do these attitudes come from? Where did this desire to do good come from? There must be something beyond us that pulls us toward that. Mm-hmm. And so his first defense of Christianity, his first apologetics, which is what we need, is behavior. And so we talk about that a lot in our sermons and at church. How do we live our lives as Christian people so people see us as an example of Christianity being a good thing? And,
yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, and then why? Why is that important to us? Because we have experienced the sense of being loved by the one who brought us into being. Yeah. That's the way we describe it.
Yeah, one of the awesome quotes in here is trying to explain what apologetics is, that it's not apologizing for something.
Although we should apologize for a lot of crap we've done as the church.
Yeah. But I love this quote, that apologetics is not about intellectual boxing your opponent down to the floor. Right? It's not this fight of smug, self-righteous mental gymnastics of I can outthink you, or I can out Bible quote you, or, it's mainly about reason and logic. It reminds me of the rabbis, right? Like that's part of their job, is to argue with one another and to come up with different, understandings of sacred text. And that, apologist is one who welcomes questions and responds to objections and attacks on the faith from opponents and those that are searching for answers and other people who question, and we would say possible converts or potential converts, right? But it's about engaging in the questions to help develop a mature understanding of belief, and then equip us with what I think is most important right now, the ability to live and think and use our faith as a way to engage with the world around us. Yeah. Right? Like, because of my faith, I know how I respond to a certain issue or to a certain situation because of my ability to wrestle with my faith, or being open to talking about how my faith affects or impacts the decisions or behavior that I have, right? Because you said people aren't gonna they listen more to what they watch you do.
Yes. They respond more to what we do than what we say.
So have you known...
My father used to have a saying. He'd say, what's that?
What would your father say?
He used to say, I can't hear what you're saying because what you're doing is speaking so loudly.
Yes. Which may be the answer to this question, but I was wondering who has been an apologist in your life?
My father, my grandfather. Yeah. They were the ones who made sense of it, explained their view of it, and were willing to share it with me. And they were also the ones who said that it does, it has to make a difference. You can believe in God all you want, but if you don't do anything about it, then what's the point?
Have you ever had to engage with someone in engage, I guess, in apologetics yourself, of answering questions about your own faith to someone?
Mm-hmm. I have.
What helped you be prepared to answer those questions? Or address their concerns, maybe?
Well, that's the key. Is do they really care about what I think and what I experience, or are they actually, what is the questioner about? Not what's the question about. What is the questioner about? And that has often steered me to the conversation of values. Why do you value what you do? What is most important to you in your life? Why? And it is amazing to me how many people can't answer that question these days. They know that they should love their family. They know that they should love their children. They know that they should work hard at their jobs. They know these things. But we have lost the sense, and Ravi Zacharias apparently said this quite clearly to people on a regular basis, we have lost the sense that there's a reason for doing all that. It's not just about the job so we can take home money. It's not just about the fact that we live together as a family and got to find harmony. There's something bigger in all of that. And so usually when I've been asked questions, I'll tell people what I believe about God, and I will say that I have been grasped by the one who has loved me into being and therefore calls me to live as a follower of God. And and they smile and nod politely, and then they say, what do you value? What's important to you and why? And how do you know why? Is there a God that can lead you to that? What is the ultimate that leads you to valuing what you value, what you think is important? Can you call that God? Maybe not. Maybe so. But So I've had those conversations more often than you'd think. Partly because the guys in the band I play in are not shy telling everybody the Reverend over here on the guitar. So at break times, sometimes people want to come and talk to the Reverend.
Yes.
It's happened a lot. A great opportunity for evangelism. I have, on occasion, seen people who've heard us play at church. Unfortunately, I've never seen any one of them stay more than one Sunday. Sad to say. Oh, well.
It says, you may have heard people say all roads lead to heaven or all religions are the same. How do these statements from Zacharias address that idea? So, truth by definition excludes. We have a right to believe whatever we want, but not everything we believe is right. All religions, plainly and simply, cannot be true. Some beliefs are false, and we know them to be false. So it does no good to put a halo on the notion of tolerance, as if everything could be equally true. To deem all beliefs equally true is sheer nonsense, for the simple reason that to deny that statement would also then be true. But if the denial of the statement is also true, then all religions are not true. Sounds like he studied Paul.
That certainly was one heck of a sentence.
Right? Like, oh man, he was a big follower of Paul. I'm trying to suss that one out. Like,
well, this is one place where Zacharias and I might not agree on things.
okay.
I don't think this side of heaven we have the clear right to name one religion as right and one religion as false. I think we are called to be in communication and communion with each other and to find out how our values overlap, the values that we have received from what is ultimate, what is infinite, what is God, what we call God, and how do we share in those. I think interfaith dialogue, as everybody knows about me, is essential to my being a priest.
Right.
And I practice it all my priesthood. But I'm become another religion. I obviously think this one's right, at least for me.
This one's right for me.
At the same time, I've got to pull at that luminous reality that there's something bigger than us. And I do that in cooperation with those of other religions.
Yeah.
Not in saying that they don't count or they're not up to mine, as good as mine. As I say about God on a regular basis, if we think we've understood God, we got it wrong. God's bigger than that.
God's now changed because God is not finite. And so what you thought you knew, it's different now.
Yep.
All right, so I'm going to change this one a little bit differently then, but it says, can people live without God? Zacharias asked this question rhetorically, and he would say theoretically, yes, that you can, but you can't live a coherent, logical life without God. If God is no longer in the paradigm, he said, what is the point of reference? If there is no God, there are no absolutes. If God does not exist, there is no moral framework upon which to build your life. So a question is, have you or someone you know ever tried to live as though God did not exist? And how did that work out?
Well, considering that the first person who talked about modern life in this way was Dietrich Bonhoeffer in The Cost of Discipleship, when he said, we have learned to answer all the important questions of life without reference to God as a working hypothesis. And look what happened in Germany after Bonhoeffer said that. It all fell apart. I don't think anybody lives without God, to be perfectly blunt. It's what is their God? Because like I said, I ask people, why do you do what you do? What do you value? It comes from those luminous and overriding values. But there are clearly values that people have that are not of God. And nationalism was the most destructive force of the 20th century because it treated the nation state, as God. And I fear that the 21st century individualism will be the most destructive force of the century, because the individual starts to treat him or herself as God, and have ultimate rights and decisions that can't be interrupted by anybody else. Yeah, everybody has a God. It just might not be the God of creation. It just might be the God of Jesus Christ. They all got a God, but some people, the gods they worship scare the heck out of me.
Yeah. So I was thinking, like, on those times where I think, I don't know that I've ever tried to live as though God did not exist, that there wasn't such a thing as a God. But I think that there are definitely times that feel distant, right? So like we feel separated from God. And I forget but one of the things I've heard is, well, that's on your end, right? God never went anywhere. But that it was your openness to things. And so I think what I think of is his psalmist railing, like, I can't get away from you, God. No matter how high I climb, how far deep into a cave I go, there's I can't go anywhere where you are not. Like, no matter what I do, there you are, God. I can't get away from you.
Yeah.
Clearly, you have a different thought, though.
I do. I know so many people have experienced the dark night of the soul, where they have no sense of God's presence, where they had felt it for years and years and years, and then all of a sudden it was just gone. And I've experienced that on numerous occasions, but the last time I experienced it, I learned something that I'd never thought of before. Mm-hmm. And that is that God is bigger than our experience of God. And I couldn't know that until I had no more experiences of God. And when I wasn't having any experiences of God, it was like, oh, maybe God is bigger than my experience. And it was an incredibly enlightening moment. I felt like the Buddha. Only I was discovering God, a new thing about God. But anyway, yeah. But I want to get back to you about people who live without God. I said kind of glibly that everybody has their God and talked about extremes.
Yeah.
There are people who live without any sense of God at all, quietly going about their lives, going from one thing to the next without any sense that there is an ultimate value beyond them. And they seem perfectly happy, or at least content. And I really just don't even know what to do with that. It's in some ways I look at it and I think it feels kind of sad. I would hate to be in that position, but there are plenty of people who seem to be okay with that. Yeah. So I don't know. Don't know what gets them through the night.
I guess what I find, like, there are moments where, yes, absolutely, I feel like God is missing. Yeah. But what I know of God is that even when I feel distant, that that doesn't mean God doesn't exist.
Right. If God pervades all things.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can't actually say there's no God when God surrounds us like the air we breathe. Yeah. We just don't necessarily experience it all the time.
So one of the things that I was trying to find it again to be able to reference it, but I'm at a loss for it now. But was kind of basically this idea that an apologist, we welcome the questions, or speak as though I am an apologist. I don't know that I am.
You are.
But that someone who is open to being, and we tell our kids that, right? And confirmands that we welcome your questions. It's kind of a motto of the Episcopal Church. Mm-hmm. Bring your questions. We welcome you and your questions, right?
You and your questions.
Yes. And so so I want to come back to, like, how we decide what it is that we believe, that then influences the ways that we engage with the world around us. And so right now in our world, that's how we engage with anti-racism. It's how we engage with our neighbor who believes something differently than we do. It's how we engage with how we react. Unfortunately, it's how we engage with the COVID-19 and the response to that, right? And so it comes down to, what do you hold to be true, and what do you believe? So I have a couple of statements about truth for us to kind of play with here at the very end before we leave. So Winston Churchill said that the most valuable thing in the world is the truth. He said, in fact, it is so valuable that often it is hidden by a bodyguard of lies.
Yeah, it's like Augustine said that the reason why sin is so attractive is because it points to the good we really should desire.
Mm.
And so the lies around the good that we really should desire are what's surrounding the truth. And we have to somehow push through that.
I wonder, like, in that case, though, and this is something for us to ponder and stop, if you need to stop us and think about it and then come back later, or go, oh, that's a good one, I'll think about that after this forum is over. But kind of like,
they can email us.
Huh?
They can email us.
But kind of, like, the truth is so valuable, it's often hidden under a bodyguard of lies. And I take that idea of the bodyguard and think of our own personal armor. And so what purpose is my armor serving? What is my personal armor? What lies am I telling myself, or what armor am I carrying around to protect myself from a deeper truth that I don't want to accept, or, I'm not ready to hear it, or, what truths am I protecting myself from the armor that I carry?
Yeah, we all carry things that we don't know to admit about ourselves. And when we're confronted with them, it's like, oh, and then we have to confront the lies or the false faces we've put up to hide those things and go, oh, yes, the truth was being protected by a bodyguard of lies. That's how valuable it is. And it's hard to discover sometimes. Well, I want to share a truth for the end of this, because we need to wrap up, because we got other places to be and other things to do. And it's the truth I saw last night that points to something bigger than ourselves. How do we know what's right and good? Because our God calls us to it. And we in the Episcopal Church constantly refer to the baptismal covenant. Mm. And one of the things we promise to do, because our God wants this of us, is to respect the dignity of every human being. And I was watching the news last night in Atlanta, and I saw this happen. It became curfew time, and most of the protesters had gone home, but there were still a handful who were in the street. And the police and the National Guard were there. And the lieutenant from the National Guard came to the very, very front and took a knee. And after taking a knee for a little while, he got up and talked to the leader of the protesters and said, you have to leave because it's curfew time and it's the law. And he responded, Black Lives Matter does not end at 9 p.m. To which the lieutenant responded, I know that, but I have to enforce the law. And they went back and forth like this for a while. And they were not necessarily being polite in their demeanor, but they were being clear and they were being respectful. And so that when the lieutenant finally said, we have to march, and the protester said, do what you have to do. And they marched and the people retreated. And they marched and the people retreated. There were no rubber bullets. There was no gas. There were no tear gas. There was just those who stood up for what they believed, while at the same time respecting the dignity of the other, until it dissipated. I mean, That's a model that demonstrates people loyal to something bigger than who they are. And that is really the only apology for God. That's the only apologists we need to be. It's people who live that kind of life that point to something bigger than us. For what it's worth.
Yeah, I don't have anything else to say to that.
I know I lapsed into preaching, sorry.
You did. Well, no, you answered my last question, which was, how does an apologist minister to the believers in this church?
Calling us to live as respectful people. Living by the values and ideals that are beyond us and bigger than us.
Yeah.
That's
all right. On that note, let us pray.
What?
Huh? Oh, okay.
You blinked out for a minute.
Okay. Help us to learn from Jesus how to listen to the heart and the hurt behind questions people may be asking. Fill our hearts with Jesus's love for them so that we will care more about them finding life and purpose in the God who created them than about winning a debate or an argument. May your love become our apologetic. Guide us by your Spirit, O God. Amen.
Amen.
We will see you next time. Thank you, Father Stephen.
See y'all next time.
Yeah. Bye-bye, everybody.